Senator from Perry.
Yes, Mr. President, I just want to comment. You know, I'm from Hazard, and right now, because of the cold weather, we're a little short on water. We had a lot of pipes burst, and it's made it a challenge for our workers there to try to get it back on. And we're a little short on jobs. As we've seen, the job loss is really targeted by district, but we are not short on common sense. I can assure you of that. As we have watched this president attack our industry. Now, I've heard speeches here so far that said, well, this really isn't anything to do with partisan politics, but I noticed that in the period of that discourse, you had Lamar Alexander mention Nixon, mention Romney, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have an issue with these people. I have an issue with the President of the United States and what he has done to one part of this state. It's hard for us to take anything that they say as a truth when you look at just the simple emails. Let me take you back to 2 weeks ago, and we're looking at the news, and we see where the EPA had originally told us that they were going to implement the standards, that were going to minimize its impact on coal. Well, we find out now, as we look at the emails, that not only were they working with the Sierra Club, but they were specifically targeting pieces that they knew would do the most damage to coal. It floors me that one individual outside of the powers of Congress has been able to have such a negative impact on one part of a state and another one, and it's punitive. Now, there's been talk that we can't do anything. We're obviously, you know, there's a guy that ran for sheriff one time in my district, and he stood up in front of a gymnasium and pulled up a chair and a guitar, and he sat down, and he strummed that guitar 3 times. Once, twice, 3 times, and he said, now I'm running for sheriff. And I strummed this guitar 3 times because it signifies the 3 things I'm going to do if I'm elected. He said, should I be elected? He said, I'm going to double Social Security. He said, I'm going to increase the minimum wage. And he said, and that war over there in Iraq will be over. And obviously the punchline. Folks, you have to understand the duties that you're charged with. I don't think anybody in here is under the illusion that we can make this president do anything. Not even the U.S. Senate or Congress seem to be able to make him do anything. But let's focus on what we can do, and to say that the state of Kentucky, that we have no power to do anything, is simply misleading. We meet all the time with natural resources, and we butt heads with them a lot for those of us in the coal fields, but in general, we have a pretty good working relationship. So if you want to know what we can do to make it easier for these coal and the people that are going out and they're harassing what's left of our coal industry, is that our natural resources cabinet all the time is under threat. You know, we started a campaign back in the summer saying, just say no. We asked them to start saying no to these new standards EPA keeps cramming down our throat. And they're worried because they're afraid if they do tell them no, this president's so punitive, we're always told, well, they'll take this funding away, or they'll do this to us, they'll come back on us. I have miners and coal companies come to me and they complain, but they say, don't really say anything because they'll make it tougher on me. Well, here's what we can do. We can tell our natural resources cabinet, hey, take a tough line with these guys. Just say no. And we as senators and representatives, we will back you when they start in here trying to make these cuts. That somebody needs to start saying no. You know, we're at the point now, my last meeting with them, and they were saying, well, if we do this, they'll do this back to us. Folks, we have reached that threshold that there is no longer anything they can do. What are they going to do? Take more jobs out of my district? What, are they going to shut down coal? There's nobody left to go after. So we have been backed into a corner, but at least if we put up a good fight, we might be able to start gaining ground in Western Kentucky where they're spreading to now. But we know who the threat is. We know this president has kept his word. He very clearly said that he couldn't stop coal mining, but he would make it so expensive that he'd put him out of business, and he's kept his word. You go over to Ashland and look at and ask those people over there how they feel about it. His actions have single-handedly increased the utilities on more people on the bottom rung than any president in history ever has. So he's kept his word at that. But like I said, in Hazard, we have an abundance of common sense. And we know exactly where our problem's coming from. You take Caterpillar, a rich history. Take Wayne Supply in the state of Kentucky, a tremendous, rich history of growing and putting forth an incredible product and the service to stand behind it. They have recently had the first layoffs they've ever had. They had to lay off 35 people in Hazard there, not because the work's not needed, not because the world's decided it doesn't need coal. That's us. Matter of fact, China is currently building the largest port that's ever been built in history to receive new coal shipments. because they're going forward with their manufacturing. Matter of fact, I will go farther to point out to you that the nations right now that are struggling with depression are the ones that have turned their back on coal. And then people say, well, you know, coal's kind of dirty, and we don't really need to be burning it. You know what? I'm going to agree with you on that. I think the future for coal is that we need to be using chemical looping. We need to be exposing coal to a chemical wash which never ignites it. It's flameless coal. It creates the same amount of energy. Anybody that's ever had one of these little pocket warmers that you've taken with you camping can attest to you that a nice carbon reaction will warm those hands and feet. The same process can be used to create energy. You've got bioconversion out there, which is one of our ways of helping dispose. We've got the biocarbon, which is a way of taking your trash and coal and blending it together, which would be a great project for Louisville. It helped clean up the trash fields and stuff that you've got in our larger cities, but it also produces energy. We've got wonderful opportunities where coal fits in the mix of the future, but with this guy at the helm, we're never going to get the chances. I remember he gave his speech about zero emissions, and foolishly I got excited because I thought this was a real opportunity. They're going to be talking about chemical looping. They're going to be talking about biocarbon, but they were talking about none of these things. And so we're not fooled in our part of the state, and there is something we can do. We can stand behind our natural resource cabinet and tell them to just say no, and we're going to back you. We understand they threaten. They always say they're going to take funding from you, or they're going to do this. It's just punitive. And it's disgusting to me as a member that sees this impact in my district to see how it's played out on these faces and on these homes and of these children. My district doesn't want a handout. We don't need you coming down there writing us a check so we can sit at home. If you've ever met a coal miner, one of our members stood up and said his grandfather was one. They are wonderful, dedicated people that are proud. I guarantee you that his grandfather never apologized for the work that he did because he knew that the work that he did was worth doing. And I'm proud of all the people back in my district, and I could not sit here and be silent. As Leo Tolstoy once wrote, I write because as I stand on the edge of the grave, I can refuse to be silent. And as we stand here at the foot of the grave of the coal industry that they're dumping on us, I refuse to be quiet. There is work to be done. But we know who's the target. We know where this is coming from. Nobody in here is fooled by that. And so if there's unity, just as though we would get together to fight a cause or an epidemic or an illness, you know, when you find out, every one of us in here do all we can for cancer. Anybody that's ever had cancer in their family, we all gather around it to fight it because it's bad for us. When there's other diseases or illnesses or something that's hurting a community beyond party lines, we all gather together to fight it. This is an issue that reaches out across any boundaries, any politics, anything. It's an issue that's damaging to the population of the state of Kentucky, namely my district. And there are so many of us in here that are not Democrats or Republicans, but we're against this. And so I raise my voice today to say, we can stand behind our cabinet. Tell them to make the tough decisions. We're going to be there with you. They're in a tough spot, and they don't need to be caught between us. They need to be caught with us behind their back, helping them tell this federal government to back off, to just say no. Thank you.